Okay, so think about this for a second. You just flip a switch, and boom, there's light. We take it for granted, but can you imagine life without it?
It's hard to fathom now, isn't it?
Totally. And when you really trace it back, a lot of what makes that simple act of flipping a switch possible goes back to the innovations of one incredible mind, Nikola Tesla. Some even argue he's the most important electrical inventor ever.
Yeah, he's often considered one of the most pivotal figures, that's for sure.
So, to really get a handle on his story and unpack his genius, we've taken a deep dive into Nikola Tesla by Azadeh Westergaard. It's actually written to be accessible for younger readers.
Oh, interesting.
But trust me, it's packed with detail and gives us a solid foundation for understanding Tesla's journey.
I've found those kinds of books can be surprisingly insightful. They cut through the complexity and give you the core essence of a person's life and work.
Absolutely. So for you, our listener, think of this as your cheat sheet to Tesla. His mind-blowing inventions, his crazy dynamics with people like Edison and Westinghouse, and the big themes that come out of his story.
It's like we're extracting the most fascinating and relevant insights from the book, just for you.
Okay, let's dive in. Right from the start, the book hits us with this anecdote about Tesla being born during a thunderstorm. I mean, talk about a dramatic entrance, right?
You can't make this stuff up. Almost symbolic, isn't it? Given his whole life was about electricity, it's like it was foreshadowed from the very beginning.
Right. And his early life really paints this picture of someone who was so connected to where he came from. He grew up in Serbia on a farm. He loved animals, apparently, like really loved them.
Yeah, that's sweet.
It's something that stayed with him his whole life. Even when he was this big shot inventor in New York City, he still had that soft spot for animals.
It's interesting how those two sides can exist in a person. That deep connection to nature and this mind that was pushing the boundaries of science and technology. I wonder, do you think maybe that sensitivity to the natural world played into how he saw and understood, like, the forces of nature around him?
That's a great point. Makes you wonder, right? Did that close observation of nature as a kid fuel his need to figure out how things worked at their core? Because even as a boy, he was inventing, constantly trying to understand and create. There's this great little story in the book about how Tesla's fascination with electricity was first sparked, literally, by seeing sparks fly when he petted his cat.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how even a small moment of wonder can set someone on a path of lifelong curiosity. Like, it underscores how powerful simple observation can be, especially for kids.
Totally. Nurturing that curiosity is so important.
Yeah, we can't talk about Tesla without talking about his inventions. And the AC induction motor, I mean, it has to be front and center. The book calls it one of his most incredible inventions, and for good reason. Because AC alternating current, that's what powers most of our world.
I mean, it's everywhere, right? We don't even think about it.
Right, it's the standard. And what's even more incredible is that Tesla didn't just invent this motor. He championed the whole AC system, for generating and distributing electricity. He was up against Edison's DC system and was convinced AC was superior, especially for transmitting power over long distances. It's more efficient because you can easily transform AC to high voltages, send it far with minimal loss, then step it back down to lower voltages so it's safe for homes and businesses.
That's the key, that transformation ability. DC just can't do that as effectively.
Exactly. And get this, he didn't stop there. The book talks about how he came up with ideas for things like radar, remote control, even wireless communication. And this was way before any of it was actually possible.
It's almost like he was seeing decades into the future, seeing technology that wouldn't exist for years to come. Talk about a visionary.
Right. Okay, so this all leads us to the War of the Currents. This wasn't some made-up movie title. It was a real battle of ideas and personality.
It sounds dramatic.
Oh, it was. You've got Thomas Edison. He was already a huge name in the world of inventions when Tesla arrived in America. Edison had achieved huge success with his DC lighting system. So he basically represented the status quo, the way things were done. Plus, his DC power plants were already up and running. People were used to it.
So he had a head start, in a way.
Big time. And get this, they actually worked together for a bit.
No way, really?
Yep, but they had completely opposite views on, like, the whole future of electricity. Edison was all in on DC, and Tesla was passionate about AC. Their collaboration fell apart pretty quickly, and it became this big public feud. It got nasty.
I can imagine. These were strong personalities, both convinced they were right.
Totally. Now, enter George Westinghouse. The book really emphasizes how important he was for Tesla's success.
In what way?
Well, Westinghouse, he was this big-time industrialist, and He believed in Tesla's AC system. He put his money and his influence behind helping Tesla develop and implement it on a large scale. I mean, he was a true believer.
So he provided the resources and the platform for Tesla to really take his ideas to the next level.
Exactly. And it was a risk for Westinghouse going up against someone like Edison. It shows you how important it is for people with resources to recognize game-changing ideas, even if they're going against the grain. And one little detail I loved was how the book mentions Tesla's family back in Serbia and the support they gave him. It's a reminder that even these brilliant, independent minds, they still have people who believe in them, who help them along the way.
Oh, for sure. That kind of support system is invaluable. It makes you realize that no one achieves great things completely alone.
Absolutely. So back to Tesla's achievements. The AC induction motor, that was a defining moment. And there's this great story in the book. The idea came to him when he was reading poetry.
Wait, what?
What?
Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible. You wouldn't think poetry and electrical engineering go hand in hand.
Right. It's like sometimes inspiration strikes in the most unexpected ways.
You never know where that spark of genius will come from.
It's so true. And then there was the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. This was a major turning point for Tesla. His AC system powered the whole thing. It was this massive public display of just how powerful and efficient and safe AC could be. And that's where he got the nickname Wizard of Electricity.
It's like that fair was a showcase, proof that AC was the real deal.
Exactly. It really solidified his place in history. Now, the book doesn't shy away from Tesla's later life, and it gets a bit sad. He moved to New York City, and remember how we talked about his love for animals? Well, he became known as the pigeon charmer because he was so devoted to the pigeons there. It really shows that connection to nature he carried throughout his life.
It's like this contrast, this brilliant inventor who also found so much peace and connection in caring for these birds. It's really touching, actually.
Yeah. But unfortunately, the book also talks about how he faced serious financial problems later on. He died without a lot of money, despite all he'd given to the world. And the book even suggests he was quite lonely in those final years.
It's a recurring theme, isn't it? A lot of brilliant, innovative people end up struggling financially, even though their work has this huge impact. It's a reminder that fame and fortune don't always follow true genius.
So true. So let's take a step back. What are the big takeaways from the book? Well, innovation, obviously. Tesla was a fountain of groundbreaking ideas.
He was constantly challenging conventional wisdom, always looking for new and better ways to do things.
And perseverance. The book really emphasizes all the obstacles he faced. Disagreements with Edison, problems getting funding, it was constant. But he never gave up on his work.
That resilience, that unwavering belief in his vision, that's what sets apart the people who truly changed the world.
And the impact of his technology is undeniable. AC power. It's literally the backbone of our modern world. We flip a switch and we have light because of him.
It's hard to imagine life without his contributions.
Right. The book also points out that Tesla was often misunderstood. He was brilliant, but maybe not always recognized for it.
It makes you think about how we remember historical figures, right? Sometimes people who are equally brilliant don't get the same recognition because they weren't as good at, say, business or self-promotion. It's a good reminder to dig deeper and look beyond the most famous names.
So true. And what I loved about the book was how it showed Tesla's compassion. He was the scientific genius, but also deeply kind, especially the animals. It reminds us that those two things aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
You can be brilliant and kind.
It breaks down that stereotype of the cold, unfeeling scientist, showing us a more human side.
Yeah. And there's this subtle message in the book about how it's okay to be different, even a little eccentric. And Tesla was definitely that.
It's a great message, especially for young people. It normalizes individuality and says, hey, those who think differently, who don't fit the mold, they often end up making the biggest contributions.
Absolutely. Now, the author who brought us this story is Azadeh Westergaard. This was her first picture book, which is pretty cool. She went to Harvard, studied writing, and now lives in New York. And get this, her father was an electrical engineer.
Oh, wow, really? That's a neat connection. It makes you wonder if that influenced her decision to write about Tesla.
Totally. And he's also written a book called The One and Only Goo-Goosh. Sounds completely different. Now, the illustrations in the Tesla book are by Julia Sarda, and people rave about them. They're supposed to be stunning. They really bring the story to life. And apparently they have this folktale quality that subtly reflects Tesla's Croatian background.
Illustrations are so important, especially for younger readers. They add a whole other dimension to the story.
Exactly. Reviews of the book call it elegant and enlightening, which seems pretty spot on. It presents Tesla as this incredibly intelligent, curious, and kind person. It's perfect for young readers, but also great for anyone who wants to learn more about him. It's got simple language, beautiful illustrations, and even extra stuff at the end, like author's notes and sources, if you want to go deeper.
Those extra resources are key. They invite people to explore further on their own. Is what makes a book like this so much more than just a simple story.
So if you're hooked and want to keep learning about Tesla, the book actually lists a bunch of other children's books on the subject. There's Who Was Nikola Tesla? It's part of that really popular series. And then there's Electrical Wizard, How Nikola Tesla Lit Up the World, which dives into his rivalry with Edison. And there's even one called Nikola Tesla for Kids, which has activities you can do. They also mention Nikola Tesla book for curious kids and a Little People Big Dreams book about him. And they suggest that to really get the full picture, you should read about Thomas Edison too.
Oh, that makes sense, getting both sides of the story. It gives you a more balanced perspective and helps you understand the context of their rivalry.
To wrap things up, Nikola Tesla by Azadeh Westergaard is a fantastic introduction to this incredible inventor's life and work.
It's a great starting point for understanding how his inventions shaped the world we live in today.
It highlights how his work with AC electricity revolutionized everything. His amazing ability to think outside the box, his refusal to give up, and why it's so important to remember his contributions.
And the book really emphasizes that he was more than just a scientist. He was a compassionate person who faced real struggles but never lost his passion for his work.
Yeah. So for you, our listener, think about Tesla's vision. I mean, he was talking about wireless technology way back then. What other seemingly impossible ideas today might become the norm in the future? And when you consider that war of the currents, how do those kinds of battles between different ideas and big personalities, how do they shape technology even today? It's something to ponder, for sure.
It makes you appreciate how progress isn't always a straight line, right?
Yeah.
It's often messy, driven by strong personalities, competing ideas, and financial pressures. It's more complex than we often realize.
Totally.
It's a fascinating dynamic.